I was singing.
Come up here and jump with us.
Dude, where are you at? Oh, I'm coming. Dude, we're having a jump party? Dude, it's like a bouncy house. Let's go.
Probably just gonna do focus. That's all I have is the parry ones. Do not sell like the evasion gems do.
Two-hand mage.
Everybody not targeting right now.
I don't know. Alpha? Down?
Where are you?
I'm to the right of the pack.
Okay.
He is down. Raccoon. Down. Job.
Yep, get him. He's on me.
Got him.
Gloria?
Oh, you got a double kill. Let's go, dude. Triple kill.
Yeah.
Back up.
Oh shit.
Don't.
What is up, gamers? It's been about 9 months since I've made a video on this channel. I feel quite bad, but I quit playing Archeage for quite a bit, and I just recently started, so I figured it's time to spin up the old camera, put my face on it this time, make it a little different, a little more exciting. I'm playing an archer instead of a healer, and I'm on the Stena Fresh Start server on Archeage Unchained. So, in playing this server, like I noticed when I first started the Unchained server, what is it, Tyrannos that I was on? Tyrannos, however you call it. There was some noobs on there. In fact, mostly noobs. Didn't know what they were doing. At this point, now it's matured to the point where you can't hardly tell the difference between that server and a legacy server. However, over here on this Fresh Start server, which isn't so fresh anymore, I tend to come to these things a bit late. There's a lot of noobs, and I see a lot of people doing dumbass shit. So I'm like, hey, let's make a video. There's probably an audience for this type of thing. Because based on the people that I'm clicking on running around in Halsey and just in the open world, it's just, what are you doing, you know? So I'm gonna make a series of videos. In that series of videos, I'm going to talk about a range of things. I'll talk about what you do when you hit 55. I'm not going to do a leveling guide because the leveling guide I did before will still apply to this game. It's the same thing. You could easily get 55 in a day or two. I saw some guy in the nation chat saying how he's been stuck on one part of the leveling process for over a month, and I'm just like, what? Hello? So yeah, if you want to know how to level up, go watch my old video. It's a bit long. The point is, I'm making a bunch of videos so that it doesn't end up being 45 minutes long this time. I'm going to talk about how to spend your currencies like honor, diligence, gold. That'll be a video. The way you should optimize spending those things, not to waste it. There'll be a video about how to synthesize. You know what? That'll probably be part of it. I'll do the synthesis materials in that video. I'll have a video about how to gear an archer and how to play an archer. In fact, if you're looking for that, you've come to the right place. I'm going to do that one first, right now. And yeah, along the way, I'll just talk about some of the common mistakes that I've been seeing in the open world and what, hopefully not you, but what all these fucking noobs are doing in this game and why it's so wrong. And if anything that I say during any of these videos you disagree with, and you have a better way of doing it, well, you're probably not the audience that I'm trying to hit here. I'm talking like, let's do better than what these noobs are doing. I'm not going for meta here, even though some of the builds that I'll recommend are going to be pretty damn close to that. So let's get into it. In order to show how to gear on Stena, I've loaded up my legacy character and my Stena character. I'm on opposite factions on each. I try to do everything new this time. Play, instead of a healer, playing an archer. Instead of the west, I'm playing on the east. But in order to show you the gear, I have an archer on legacy as well. So I'm gonna go down piece by piece on all of these items It's going to be a little bit different than my gear guide was for a healer because I was wearing mostly Hiram gear. And in this, I'd recommend getting a Disciples set. So let me pause the video here and collect my thoughts, my big ass brain. Before we go down the list of each piece of gear and what you should get stats wise on your items, let's talk about a concept that applies to getting dungeon gear in general. So the point of getting dungeon gear is because you have the set bonuses, right? So you have the 3 set bonus, the attack speed on the swift gear. 5 set bonus would be the plus 5% to all attack damage. And those things are what makes this gear great. One thing that's going to come into play later on, though, is that you're going to start getting, when you do Noriette past round 50, you're going to get these shards that can combine, and you can create these Luna Frosts that go on your gear. You can see ranged attack right here on my Swift Cat. Ranged attack plus 15. Now that gem has a set bonus of its own. So if you get 5 of those gems, there's just additional stats that go along with that. This is important because where you take which gear matters. For example, on Legacy, I've taken Hiram Guardian Fists instead of Library. The reason for that is the frost that I have on Fists generally is the ranged crit damage plus 12%. That's probably your strongest frost when it comes to frosts going on gear. So what I would recommend is you take Library gear for all slots except for your chest and your fists. That's because the chest just has a lot of resilience on it, and it's a really good piece for Hiram, and then your fists to maintain that ranged crit damage, as well as the received damage frost on the chest. That's just a huge frost. So we're talking about perfectly setting up yourself for the future. What I've done on Fresh Start is, unfortunately, I've taken up some Disciple Swift Fists. It's not the end of the world, but I'm going to pay for it later if I want to get that 5 set for those frosts. I'm going to end up losing this ranged crit damage, and realistically what I'm going to probably have to do is switch this Hiram cap over to Library gear and then put a Hiram piece for my fists to, get back on track for where I want to be. Because little things like that, little optimizations that you can make as far as your stats will make all the difference in PvP. So that is all I'm going to say about the set bonuses and how to take it. Again, that's every piece you take should be the Library set except for your chest and your hands. For an archer or a melee for that matter, if you're going to go with a dungeon set of gear. Okay, now that I'm off my soapbox about the frosts and setting yourself up to have the right stats later on, let's talk about the stats you do want on the Hiram gear that you do take. And I'll show that here on Legacy because, like I said, on Legacy I'm much further along, and what I'm trying to do is get close to where I'm at now on Legacy on the Fresh Start with the shortest resistance possible and do it in the smartest way possible so that I can start, I've already been able to start being relevant in PvP even at a low gear score because of the way that I've geared myself. But ultimately, on your chest piece, you're going to want to get the agility if you're a archer. Received melee damage reduction is great. You could go with max health if you want here. That's really up to you. It depends. But whatever you do decide to do on both of your Hiram pieces, if you're going Library set, make sure to do the same thing. Don't do one and then the other on another piece. So receive melee damage or max health for the second stat, and then resilience for the third stat for that piece. Like I showed you here on my Hiram fists, I have agility, receive melee damage, resilience is going to be the same thing for those things. For your Library gear, you don't really get to select stats right away. I'm not even on Legacy to the point where I can do that, so we won't talk about that in this video. That's a bit further down the road than I intended to reach. Once you get to that stage in the game, you'll probably know what you're doing and you won't need to be watching videos like this. Okay, I'm reshooting the weapons section yet again because I don't know what the fuck I'm doing here. I'm new to this whole... I've made like 2 videos whatever. Okay, take like 10 on this because I'm trying to make a decent video. I keep rambling on. It's getting too long. Whatever, let's get into it. For weapons, essentially at the end of the day, what your goal is that you want to stack up as much range crit damage as possible, and you want to try to land somewhere between 70 and 80% range critical rate. Now those stats are going to come from these 3 slots right here, your 2 weapons and your bow. So on those weapons, the biggest stats you're going to want to take is definitely take agility on all 3 for the basic stat. Now ranged crit rate and ranged crit damage is what some people go, and early on I understand doing that because you're trying to get that ranged crit rate up. However, as you increase your agility and as you boost up your costume and your necklace and various other things, you're going to get more crit rate naturally. So at the end of the day, what you want your weapons to look like is more like this: agility, defense, penetration, and ranged critical damage. So that's up to you. Try to maintain 70 to 80% critical rate. Now when you're lower, I'm only about 10k gear score on Stena, and what I've done is ranged crit rate, defense pen, and agility in one, and ranged crit damage and defense pen in the other. It's not ideal, but as you can see, I'm low on ranged critical rate. Once I get that to come up a little bit naturally as I increase my agility, I will roll off this ranged crit rate for ranged crit damage with my 5 remaining changed attempts. So this dagger will sort itself out in the end, because ideally you want to just have that ranged crit damage. Now on your bow, you're going to do similar thing. You're going to take ranged crit damage and defense pen. Again, if one of those 2 stats rolls ranged crit rate instead, early on in the game, probably not a bad idea to just keep it until you get higher up on that ranged crit rate. There's an event going on right now where you can get a whole bunch of serendipity stones. I have, let me see, yeah, I have 36 of them after already rolling my gear to the way that I wanted it. So if you take that, this won't apply later on, so I'm not going to go too deep into it, but these gem upgrade scrolls, go to Eternal with them, take the serendipity stones, you'll thank me later. The next big thing that I see people, maybe they just don't know about it, or don't think it's that important. What you need to do when you get about 8, you have to be 8k gear score to enter the dungeon. But there is a dungeon that you can do once per day. Under the dungeon tab here, go to the 3rd one down, Hereafter Rebellion. I can make a whole separate video on how to play, or you can just go on YouTube, search it. There's a lot of guides on how to do it. It's pretty easy, it's straightforward. You don't need to be super geared, it helps. But every time you do that dungeon, if you get over 400, you're almost guaranteed to get a necklace. And the way your necklace will start, let's see if I have a basic one. Yep, there's a basic one right here in my inventory, this heroic one on the right hand side. So it started out with agility and healing power. One of those stats I like, the other one I don't, but because of the serendipity stones that I have in excess, I decided to, that's how my first one rolled as well. It was agility and healing power. You feed it up to divine with the abyssal enhancers, and then you can awaken it with scrolls you also get out of that dungeon. This, when it awakens, automatically goes from divine to epic, and you'll have 4 stats on it. The stats I recommend taking as an archer are agility, ranged skill damage, defense penetration, and ranged attack. As you can see, that's a huge amount of stats from this necklace, and a lot of times I'm walking around and I see people using basic stuff like an illustrious necklace or something like that, and I'm just like, no. You need to get yourself a soul liberator. Just take it to epic. You don't gotta worry about going too much further than that right out of the gate, but do that dungeon once a day, get your necklace up. What I'd recommend is make sure you at least have one of the stats you want before you start feeding that thing, because it's very expensive to feed. You'll notice it costs quite a bit more in terms of synthesis fees than your standard abyssal gear does. So ideally, if you have all the time in the world, you could just farm that dungeon until you get both stats that you want. And I believe that would be agility and ranged skill damage is the 2 that you want before awakening it to the Soul Liberator. But that's a huge source of stats. When you start looking at that combined with the costume, as we've talked about, combined with all the offensive stats on your weapons, you're starting to see here, I have the capacity to output quite a bit of damage here. The next thing, we'll just move right into it, is your cloak. When you get to 55, get yourself into a guild that is, I think you need to be rank 3 guild to be able to go to your guild tab here, go to prestige shop, and you're gonna want to get yourself one of these cloaks. I recommend the Wind Song Cloak for the increased move speed, plus each of these cloaks has a different set of stats that you can have, and as far as like damage output, I believe that the Wind Song Cloak for the archer is the best, so definitely take that one. And the stats you want to roll on that thing, all you do is farm around Diamond Shores, or you can go to the castles and farm those purified mobs to get the blue shards to feed this thing. The synthesis fees are rather inexpensive for these. It just takes a bunch of honor to upgrade the cloak. So the stats I have here are ranged critical damage and received melee damage reduction. I think I could probably roll that off to be a little something better, but agility and stamina. So I would recommend going with the stam, the agility, and the range crit damage at a minimum. The other stats kind of up to you. It's not quite as important as the other 3. Oh, pilot requested a duel. Oh god, this boy's gonna fuck me up. Ooh. It's not ideal to duel with all your interfaces open, by the way. Okay, so the last section of gear that we haven't yet talked about are your basic accessories, talking about your earrings and your rings, as well as your instrument. So as you can see, I'm 9.5k gear score, and I still have just the illustrious wave crap that I got from questing up. With the exception of the necklace, that soul liberator is extremely important. But yeah, I wouldn't focus too much on those early on, especially because those things can be expensive. If you're doing Noriette, get Noriette, and I'll talk about that later. So as far as your flute or lute, the stats you want to take on this are agility, ranged attack, and move speed or evasion. I'd recommend evasion, but between move speed and evasion, that's really up to you. I wouldn't start over if you get one or the other, because essentially evasion isn't really that great on its own if you don't stack a whole bunch of it. Let's see what I can do. Where is this guy? Now that we have gone over basically every piece of gear, let's talk about where to focus first. So as an archer, your number 1 piece of gear is obviously your bow. Get your bow up first. I'd recommend going to Mythic as quickly as possible. Save your infusions, don't bother going to Eternal right away. The other things you should be focusing on is, like I said before, this Soul Liberator necklace is extremely important. As soon as you hit AK, you need to start working on that immediately. Get a cloak at 55 as soon as you can. If you're in a guild that can't get the cloak, hit up your guild leader, ask him if you can leave for a day, go to a level 3 guild, get the cloak, come back, whatever. You need this thing. The stats are important once you awaken it to Delphinad. On top of that, other than that, what you need to do is focus on getting your 5 set from the library. Get that immediately, and then slowly bring those things up. I'd just take them to Divine, all 5 pieces to Divine, and you should be pretty much set in terms of getting that 5 set bonus, and the synthesis fees going up to that are fairly cheap at first. So yeah, don't worry too much about that. Additionally, your weapons are going to be important. Getting these stats on these weapons is your number 1 priority. The important pieces of gear, what you're going to be squishy for a long time on this server, but you can kill people if you focus on getting your bow, because of those 3 stats on that bow, getting your weapons, getting your necklace. If you can afford a costume, get a costume, and get that cloak, and get the 5 set. Those are the things you should be focused on first. I wouldn't recommend focusing heavily into your accessories at first. I wouldn't recommend focusing too hard on your flute. It's just a stat stick, and those stats aren't that great. And I wouldn't focus too much on those Hiram pieces. I'd say out of the break, take them to Celestial or maybe T2 Divine at Radiant, and keep them there for a little while. And focus on that bow. Get that bow up to Mythic as quickly as you can. Related to your gear, but not necessarily gear itself, is you're going to want to be migrating your agility. So at the general merchant, you can buy these cloaked agility migration talismans that will add 5 to an agility stat and subtract 5 from another. And since I'm out of gold right now, I'll do it on legacy. So just to demonstrate here, it's on page 3, agility migration talisman. Open it up. Originally, when you first get going, you're going to want to take strength to agility migration. After a while, I think it's like 150 strength, something like that, you'll have no more strength to move, so you'll end up needing to switch stats. I recommend switching to spirit after you've maxed out strength. Do strength first though. So here we go. Once you get the thing, you open it up, you throw it in there. I'm maxed out, I need to get a thing, but as you can see, it's going to subtract and then it's going to add. I'm up to 240. And as you can see, my strength, oh, I'm down to 23. I could have taken strength, but yeah, this is a good way to increase your agility. You need to get that agility stat up as much as you can. Some of the good players are going to be over 2,000 agility, and agility is going to increase that critical rate like I was talking about before. Once you get this agility higher and higher, you will not have to take the crit rate on any of your weapons, and you can just focus on that defense penetration. When you start stacking up defense pen on all these weapons and on your Soul Liberator, you're going to end up being pretty nasty in terms of being able to hit geared players with your attacks. The final thing I'm going to talk about in this video is going to be what gems to put in your gear. And I'm just going to go down the list on my legacy character to show this is the ideal. I'm not going to give a long explanation on all of this stuff because this video is already starting to get pretty long here. So in your headpiece, take range crit rate. Like I said, that's a hard stat to stack, so max that out, range crit rate in your head. In your chest, resilience. Take all the resilience you can get. In your belt, you want that blazing arrow damage. In your guards, I prefer taking ranged attack. If you want to be a little tankier, you can take like a defensive stat here, like physical defense. But I'd recommend just taking the ranged attack. In your fists, you can either take evasion or focus. I prefer to be a glass cannon, do as much damage as possible, and you should too, in my opinion. So I would say go with focus here. You can't put a gem on that, but you can put a Luna Stone on it. And I like to choose the one that gives you increased agility with every attack, stacking up to 5 times. And that's pretty sick. On your legs, you're going to go with toughness as for your gems. And on your feet, you are going to go with resilience. Now, if you find yourself sucking at PvP because somebody looks at you and breathes in your direction and you're dying, it's because you don't have enough resilience, you don't have enough toughness. Get your chest, your legs, your feet, stack those gems in there. Put the T1 gems in there, spend your honor, put those gems in there. That's what you should be focusing on with your honor. On the left hand side, let's just start with the weapons. You want range crit damage in there. The last patch increased the cap for range crit damage to, I want to say it's 350%. So as much range crit damage as you can find, you're going to be able to use it. So stack that as much as you can. I'm working on it here. Same thing with your bow, range crit damage. And then in your lute or flute, take attack speed. That'll increase the speed of your endless arrows. And that's another video. I won't talk about endless arrows and stuff like that. On your costume, you'll be able to put some gems in there if you can get some undergarments. On the Stena server, this is going to be really rare to see because it's very expensive. If you have undergarments, you're probably not the audience for this video, but I would also recommend stacking attack speed in there. And in terms of the frosts, like I said, all of your library set, eventually you're going to end up putting the 15 attacks, range attack on. But in the meantime, For your chest, which should be Hiram, take receive damage. Take agility +9 on your swift belt. Agility +9 on your guards. Those will be switched out again. Like I said, those will be switched out. Take range crit damage in your hand. This is critical. That's huge. That's a lot of damage there. Toughness on your legs. Don't be running around with resilience in your legs. I hate seeing that. Whenever I see somebody running around with resilience in their legs, I'm just like, what the fuck are you doing, man? Again, toughness in your feet as well. Both of those slots, slot that toughness in. Toughness is better than resilience. And then for the frost on your weapons, you don't need them. You can put whatever you want just to arbitrarily increase your gear score, or some people like to take the magic skill damage because it can help if you're running poisoned weapons. It can boost that damage, but it's really insignificant, so it's not a big thing. Range skill damage 2.0% in your bow, obviously, and you can use accessory. I don't know if these are even on Fresh Start, so I won't even get into that because I'm not even close to having those things in terms of Luna stones for accessories. But that same accessory thing will go on your flute. One final note before I wrap this video up is these agility +6 or +9 frosts that I recommended putting on a couple of pieces of gear while you're waiting to get up to, you know, the ranged attack +15. Those can be acquired just by going to the auction house, go to Luna Luna Stone and Luna Drop and Gale. That's what you want here. So as you can see, the here's the +6 ones for 25 gold, pretty cheap. There's the +7 one for 75 gold. So whatever your budget can afford. These +6 ones, that's a pretty good deal, 25 gold. Put those things on your gear. The pieces exactly to put those on are going to be, like I said, to put them on your belt, put it on your guards, and put it on your head. And that should be it for those, because the other ones are pretty important. So those three, easy to get. I just wanted to put that in there so to avoid the comments and people saying, hey, where did you get that from? Just hop on the auction house and grab that shit. So yeah, I think that is about all I have time for in this video. This is already a really long video, and yeah, I don't know. If you like a video like this, let me know in the comments below. Instead of making like an hour-long video, I decided let's make a short one. Let's see if I can get this to switch. Hey, there we go. Like I said, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing here. I'm trying to do this new thing. Just started playing this server. Seemed like it'd be a fun idea to make a couple of videos, because as I run around and I see people in the world, I just wonder, like, has no one ever told them how to play this game or what's important and what to focus on? So I can be that for you. Let me be your Archeage daddy. It's not weird.
OnlyFans, toes for hire. Wanna spread them in like between. Give me some of that jelly bean. Yeah, girl, show me what you got. Lanky in your crib with your twat. You got nice toes. Lanky bustin' fat toes. Yeah. No contest. I pay for undressed. Yeah.